So I was going through Wikipedia the other day and I stumbled upon this article. And it gave me an idea. How fast can we fling a payload out of the solar system? By payload, I mean an actual probe that could conceivably get science done. I don't just mean the smallest avionics package that KSP-RO allows for. So I built this little doohickey. Massing under 600 kilograms, it contains the beefiest antenna KSP-RO has to offer. Twin RTGs for power, about 1.5 kilometers per second of fuel for attitude control and course corrections, and room for various scientific experiments. Finally, the antenna was set to use the Ka band, and the power was cranked up to 50 dBm to ensure the maximum possible communications range. So how do we get this little chap into interstellar space? I decided to develop the launch vehicle in separate blocks, starting at the top and working the way down. The first block I developed was the kick block, a series of solid rocket motors that would provide the final 3 kilometers per second or so of impulse. After several simulations and redesigns, I settled on a 3-stage design. The first stage was the Star 48 with thrust vectoring for attitude control. The second and third stages were 11 and 3 Baby Sergeant motors respectively, using the probe's RCS thrusters for attitude control. The next block was the Orbital Block, which featured a 2-stage design. The upper stage was a slightly modified Centaur upper stage copy-pasted from the Atlas V. The only major change was swapping the RL-10A4 for the slightly more efficient RL-10B2. The lower stage was what I nicknamed the S4C, featuring a slightly less efficient but far more powerful J2X engine. And I do mean slightly less efficient. The RL-10B2 hits about 465 seconds of specific impulse, whereas the J2X hits about 448 seconds. So it's no slouch. Both stages were constructed with the extremely lightweight balloon tanks, both stages had attitude control, and the Centaur packed the avionics for the whole block. Testing it in the simulator, it could escape Earth's sphere of influence in less than 12 hours after beginning the main escape burn, and was expected to reach the orbit of Saturn in approximately 460 days. That's just over 1 year and 3 months. For context, the 2 Voyager probes took 3.5 to 4 years to reach Saturn. It was also during this simulation when I decided on a 2-burn method. The first burn would take the craft into an elliptical Earth orbit, before swinging around and commencing the main escape burn. By doing it this way, the hope was that the craft would be able to take better advantage of the O-berth effect, and squeeze just a little bit more velocity out of the craft. So, we've got our vessel. But how do we get this 180-ton vehicle into orbit? That's where the third block comes in. Introducing the Ares 5 Spice. As the name implies, this vehicle takes inspiration from the cancelled Ares 5 of the ill-fated Constellation program. Featuring 4 5-segment solid rocket boosters, 5 RS-25E engines on the first stage, and twin J2Xs on the second stage, this absolute unit could comfortably haul a 180-ton payload to the target 180-kilometer parking orbit, with a decent amount of room to spare. So then, let's put it all together. The Interstellar Express was launched into a 180-kilometer parking orbit, coplanar with the Moon, with the second stage having just shy of 600 meters per second spare in the tanks. After performing both burns, using the second stage to push us just that little bit faster, the probe had a velocity of just over 24 kilometers per second relative to the Earth. Upon reaching interplanetary space, the probe had a heliocentric velocity of a little over 53 kilometers per second. It reached Jupiter's orbit in about 8 months, Saturn's orbit in about 1 year and 3 months, Uranus' orbit in about 2 years and 6 months, and finally Neptune's orbit in just over 4 years and 2 months, with a heliocentric velocity of about 33 kilometers per second. For context, Voyager 2 took roughly 12 years to reach Neptune and departed with a heliocentric velocity of about 16 kilometers per second. So suffice to say that the Interstellar Express is going places fast. But we can do better. If the launch is timed such that the trajectory encounters Jupiter, it's possible to exploit the Jovian gravity well to go even faster. After finding the ideal launch window, the launch was repeated in early July of 1951. After burning as before, the majority of the probe's fuel was used to bring the Jupiter encounter closer, and to the backside of the giant, such that we'd leave Jupiter with more velocity relative to the Sun than when we arrived. A final course correction brought the perijove to about 5.7 thousand kilometers, and thus the Interstellar Express began its fall towards the gas giant. About 14 hours from perijove, it crossed the orbit of Callisto. 7 hours from perijove, it crossed the orbit of Ganymede. 4.5 hours, Europa. 2.5 hours, Io. At perijove, the probe was travelling over 67 kilometers per second with respect to Jupiter. It fired its engines one last time, burning the remainder of its fuel, using the Oberth effect again to travel as far and as fast as it possibly could. But how much velocity had it gained? Upon entering Jupiter's gravity well, it was travelling at about 37 kilometers per second with respect to the Sun. Upon leaving, it was travelling at just over 48 kilometers per second. It reached Uranus's orbit 2 years and 4 months after liftoff. It reached Neptune's orbit approximately 3.5 years after liftoff, with a heliocentric velocity of just under 45 kilometers per second. At the same time, the final stage of the kick block was roughly halfway between the orbits of Uranus and Neptune and was travelling at just under 32 kilometers per second. From here, there was only one thing left to do. As of writing, the furthest probe from the Sun is Voyager 1, at a distance of roughly 23.585 billion kilometers, or 157.65 astronomical units, and travelling at a little under 17 kilometers per second, or 3.56 astronomical units per year. Launched in summer of 1977, it is a little over 45 years old as of writing. So how far will the Interstellar Express travel in that same time span? At a little over 11 years after liftoff, it reached 15 billion kilometers, or approximately 100 astronomical units, and was travelling at just under 44.5 kilometers per second. At 45 years, 74 days after liftoff, the Interstellar Express was 62.816 billion kilometers, or 419.90 astronomical units, travelling at a velocity of 44.3 kilometers per second, or 9.34 astronomical units per year. It is a long, long way from home, and yet, even at this distance, it is still able to slowly communicate with the Earth from whence it came. And as it silently spins in the endless ocean of interstellar space, its mission, and this video, comes to an end.